obviously after I review the code, I wouldn't mind putting it in the official piece repo if that's what he wants. But also I found something that I didn't like, and it's the fact that someone just posted, "Hey, I found this new piece. Thank you very much, Carlos," whatever. And man, that wasn't even my repo. That wasn't even the banner of the piece. Like, people start thinking that it was my tool because it had the name piece, and we work in cybersecurity. We shouldn't be able to be phished that easily.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of 401 Access Denied. I'm your host for the episode today, Joe Carson, Chief Security Scientist and Advisory CISO at Delinea. And I'm really excited about today's podcast. I've got a very special guest on, and it's something that, I've known about Carlos for a long time, but it's a pleasure to really get to have a really in-depth and fun discussion. So, Carlos, I'll pass over to you to introduce yourself, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
No, Joe, the pleasure is mine. Thank you very much for having invited me here. I'm very excited to be here with you, discussing the topics we are going to discuss. I don't want to do any spoilers. For the people that doesn't know me, I'm Carlos Polop. I am the guy behind Hacktricks, the Peace, Pulper Panda, and these open source resources I dedicate to cybersecurity. And at the moment, I just work as senior security engineer in a fintech.
Awesome. And for me, one of the, I think in every pen test that I've involved into, an ethical hack, and even incident response, I get into a lot of incident response. And one of the biggest things that always gets into me is how easy it is for the attackers to escalate privileges. And it's something you see all the time. And even, I get involved in a lot of capture the flags and online events. And for me, just going through, and one of the things that always fascinates me is the privilege escalation piece. It's the one that gets me excited. Once I get the initial foothold, I really get excited about how do I elevate the privileges right up to either root or domain. And a lot of the tools I use in order to do that, in the live ones, I kind of go more manual. I take the manual approach. Because you want to be less detected, you don't want to be as noisy. But definitely one thing that I go to all the time is LinPEAS and WinPEAS. They are really awesome, and I've always loved automation. For me, automation is the way to go. So Carlos, it's amazing, and I'd like to also kind of where did you get started with privilege escalation? What was the background? Why did you write the scripts? And even the book on the Hacktricks was fantastic as well, because for everyone it's a go-to reference in order to make sure that we're actually going through each step along the way and elevating.
Well, it's a pleasure that you say that. I'm really proud of Hacktricks and the piece, and I really enjoy people using it. So why I started it? You mentioned it a little bit. Obviously, when I need to be stealthy, I also doesn't launch LinPEAS because that is going to be very noisy. The same with WinPEAS. I try to take a more manual approach. But I think that before LinPEAS, WinPEAS, and these scripts, in hack the box machines, in this kind of boot to root CTFs where you need to escalate privilege, most of the people were doing this manual job, and one of those people at the beginning was me. And I'm gonna be honest, I hated that part of the machines because I will always do the same. I will just go to this blog post and start copy pasting all the things. At some point, I will just put them in my own local blog and copy paste from it. I just hate it because it was always the same. At some point, you will find it, but why do you need to do this manually? And by that time, I was preparing for the USCP, and I was frightened that I wouldn't have enough time to enumerate properly the machines and find the privilege escalation. So I just start doing my own scripts. And at some point, I just decided to put the colors because I knew I was going to be pretty nervous for the exam. So I say hey, put red color so I know where I need to take a look. And actually, I started LinPEAS. And WinPEAS, but not the version we all use now, but the batch version,
The
because I
batch
knew
file. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
The batch file. Yep.
the OSCP machines were
Mm-hmm.
kind of old and the .NET weren't going to work. So I just created this batch version just to enumerate them fast and try to find the escalation path. So I guess the OSCP has part of the fault of creating these kind of scripts.
But to your point, one of the things is, yes, as doing penetration tests, I go to the manual method. When I'm doing catch the flag, I go to the automated methods of LinPEAS and WinPEAS. But as a defender, I also use it as a defender to go through. Even when I, for example, go into organizations doing incident response, I think for organizations should also be running these as a defensive capability too, because you want to find out if you've got misconfigurations. You want to find out if you've accidentally stored credentials in the deployment of a machine. So I think, from an attacker perspective, but from a defender perspective, these are essential because a lot of cases the things that go missed are not checked. So I mean, for me, I think this is more important for defenders to be using these tools, more importantly than even just the attackers.
Yeah. Actually, I got this conversation maybe a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
and about a person that had exactly the same mind as you, had the same question, and he was telling me like, "Hey man, I was given this image. Is there any
Mhm.
way I can run LinPEAS on it so I
Mhm.
can check the results and
Mhm.
find misconfigurations?" And at that point, I didn't thought about it, but he actually answered himself like 2 minutes later. He just told me, "Hey, I did chroot over the image, and I wrote LinPEAS, and I found the misconfigurations they had." So it's completely true what you say. If you're a defender, you can just run LinPEAS in your machines to try to find these misconfigurations, fix them. But even if you are doing a forensics job, or even, for example, I'm
Mhm.
now using it to check some firmwares, you
Mhm.
can just mount the image, use chroot,
Yep.
and just run LinPEAS and try to find some misconfiguration that LinPEAS is already looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the thing is, even when we look at these for, things can always be used for good and bad. But I think the benefit here is that for the people who's defending, they will get a lot more value being able to harden machines and to be able to configure and put the right things in place to make it as difficult as possible. Because for me, it's always, I like it to be a challenge. So I do. So one of the things I'd like, for privilege escalation, I mean, from Windows to Linux and other platforms, how different is it in regards to the steps and processes? Are they very different in your experience, or do you find it the same techniques used?
Well, the main difference I usually find is that in Linux you have Bash, and in Windows you
Yeah.
will have Bash or PowerShell. And if you are not used to Windows, that might be a problem, definitely.
Hmm.
Well, and if you are lucky, of course, you now can have Bash in Windows, but
Yeah.
that's not usually the case in the police system. From the techniques perspective, I think they have a lot of differences,
Hmm.
but they also have main techniques that are quite similar. So regarding the differences, when I started creating this LinPEAS, WinPEAS,
Hmm.
I think the Golang language was starting to be known. And a lot
Okay.
of people told me like, hey man, why don't you just create one previous escalation tool in Go?
Okay.
And the answer was pretty straightforward. Even if they have some techniques in common, more of most of the Unix privilege escalation techniques are only in Unix, and most of the Windows are only in Windows.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be looking for SUID binaries in Windows,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
you are not going to be looking for unquote service paths in Linux,
Correct.
and like this with hundreds of different techniques. So it didn't make any sense to create just one of them.
Registries are very different as well. The one thing that you do find probably that overlaps is the way configuration files are done. Probably, if it's XML or JSON or whatever it might be, the configurations might be the same way, but you're absolutely right. Registry, services, libraries, user profiles, if I find them, they're very different techniques. You go through the same process if you look at the OS, and then of course you go into the users, and then
Yeah.
you follow the same process, but I find them very different techniques in both systems.
Yeah, I tried to follow the same process because I knew that people were going to be more comfortable with Linux and the other
Mhm.
people were going to be more comfortable with Windows. So even if they are completely different tools, if they have a similar structure, people is going to find them easier to read.
Yep.
And obviously I put all these hack tricks links because that was actually for myself, because I couldn't learn hundreds, tens of previous escalation techniques, and I knew that probably in a couple of weeks I was not going to remember what was those techniques. So I just put those links saying, hey man, just take a look here, because here everything is explained. Anyway, you also introduce the similar techniques. I found that in Linux and Windows, a very common way to escalate privilege are just permissions misconfigurations. Maybe you can read or you can write things that you shouldn't be able, and that's very that's a common thing they have. So actually, if you go to the repo, you are going to find some YAMLs files, where in this case I am putting all the known files I know that might be containing passwords. And in case of LinPEAS, part of the LinPEAS code is created automatically by Python reading these YAMLs. And in case of WinPEAS, that YAML is going to be embedded in the binary.
Okay.
This means that the common thing they do, that is looking for these files, and soon enough we can talk about this later. They are going to look also for regexes. The thing that they do in common, they actually do it in common. I don't need to maintain both lists independently or anything like that, because I try to do that and I don't recommend it to anyone. So the common parts are actually pretty common. So that helps me a lot. Like every time I do a new Hack the Box machine, I know I'm going to learn about a new software that is storing new password in a new different file. Before it took me maybe half an hour just to make sure it worked, to put in LinPEAS, to put in WinPEAS. Now I just go to this YAML, copy paste something similar I want to do, change the names, and in less than a minute I have the new LinPEAS and WinPEAS will prepare to catch this new file.
Yeah, well, that's awesome to kind of at least make it as efficient as possible, and look for the similarities across both platforms. What is some? I mean, when I'm doing a lot of the kind of machines in Capsule on occasion, of course, you do find the kernel bugs, which do occur. What's the primary, as you mentioned, misconfigurations about reading access files and writing to files? Is that the primary method that most attackers are able to successfully elevate privileges? Or what would you find be the most common? I think in Windows, probably services might be kind of a common way to misconfigure services of write and folders or uncoded paths. But what do you find is the most common?
I mean, I think it will depend if it is a CTF or if it is a production live, whatever machine. In CTF, you may find the SUID binary in all the easy CTFs, and that's everything you need. In other CTF, you may find maybe that you can access some pseudo tokens in other process, maybe that you can modify this service file, or maybe that you can modify some folder where you can indicate the folder where the libraries are loaded from, and then you can write your own library that will be loaded into the binary. There are definitely a lot of different things, but in live machines, I can tell you that the most common thing to escalate privilege are credentials. Like in maybe 90% of times that doing my job, I manage to get inside a machine or anything, you are going to find some credentials, you're going to find some tokens, and from them, even if you cannot escalate privilege internally, you're going to be able to escalate privilege probably to external platforms, or even using the metadata endpoint, you will find some useful tokens. From the Windows perspective, I think is the most common thing in both CTFs and live machines are going to be misconfigured services. Like for some reason, I continue seeing that misconfiguration that everybody knows about, and I don't know why people are still committing the same errors. Another kind of common things I see in Windows machines is that maybe you can just write to the web server, and right into the web server, you're going to be able to escalate to a new user that will probably have a better token privilege that will
Mhm.
allow you to escalate privilege. That's also kind of common in Windows and not that common in Linux.
Yeah, some of the methods in the real world scenarios that I've seen used by mostly kind of ransomware criminals was around, unfortunately, organizations giving local administrator rights to users on systems, and I don't know if they have this perception that by giving local administrator rights is that it's limited to the one device and that users only. I don't know if we should get Microsoft to rechange it from local admin to being an administrator irrespective, because one I find that the attackers find that they're on a machine with local administrator rights is literally 3 or 4 steps that they have to changing the configuration of that machine, and luring. What they tend to do is they try to lure somebody with domain administrator rights then to log on after making the registry changes, so that they can run Mimikatz. Of course, even with local administrator rights, I've seen them using things like GMER, to which we typically use to check if the system has kernel exploits or backdoors,
Yeah.
or rootkits. The attackers are actually using it to see if there's any security solutions that's monitoring their activities as well. So they're actually using GMER to look for security solutions that may not be visible in the interface. So it's always interesting to see how things are being used. But with local administrator rights, literally they're able then to disable security on the system, even if it's only for maybe a few minutes, like 3 or 4 minutes at a time. The sessions are quite short. Then basically making those registry changes, and then kind of clearing their tracks, and then they wait for some domain admin to log on, and that basically is literally they come back and they've got full domain admin rights. So just waiting for those moments. That's what I've seen most commonly is unfortunately overprivileged users having too much rights to allow you to change the configuration enough in order to find ways to elevate privileges. So that's what I commonly see in the kind of instant response or digital forensics. But more, in a exploitation or misconfiguration, definitely service paths and registry is the more common that I do see on the Windows side.
That's why privilege escalation is that fun. There are thousands of ways to do it wrong and allow people to just escalate privilege.
Yeah.
And also something you said about these ransomware groups, I want to say that LinPEAS and WinPEAS are made for pen testers and for defenders to improve the security, because I saw some of those groups using them.
Mm-hmm.
The defender should use it before them because they have access and fix all these misconfigurations.
That's exactly what I was mentioning earlier. It is definitely best the defenders using it first, and using it in a way that allows you to harden your systems and defend and correct. Because like all tools, even I see all PS exec being commonly used, and PS exec is something that has been great for sys internals and Win internals for many years, and we heavily depend on it to manage and automate the environments. But it's primarily, you can never stop things being used for both good and bad. But I definitely recommend the defenders to use it first. It's definitely. I think that this is what allows us, because otherwise the attackers are going to use the manual methods anyway. And they're going to use the same methods as we mentioned earlier. When you're doing a real live system, you're going to do the manual methods. You're going to know how to do the manual methods. But defenders sometimes maybe not have all the knowledge and all the skills all the time. So yes, better running the automation, LinPEAS and WinPEAS, to really get that visibility quickly and before the attackers find it. For me, it's essential. It's better. I was always once told that it's better to stop the system from being compromised than it is to restore it later. And that's it allows a better state and the business to be more resilient as well. So, question: one of the things that what's kind of areas to, I've seen a lot of things where in recent months and even the past year, of course, I've seen a lot of organizations have moved to cloud and SaaS and other types of environments. What I've seen, things like Azure and AWS and becoming very popular, kind of used. What about privilege escalation in cloud environments? What do you see? It is different slightly than it is on premise, because you're dealing a lot with different roles and different configurations. But what are you seeing with cloud systems and privilege escalation in cloud?
I'm glad you asked me that questions, because then I can do some spam of my latest tool called Purple Panda, and you can just find it in my GitHub repo.
Yep. We'll make sure. I'll definitely make sure to include the hat tricks books and the GitHub repo for your in the show notes, so people can easily find it. So we'll definitely for the audience, we're going to make sure that all the links are included, so you can easily find Carlos's GitHub and the hat tricks.
Perfect. I appreciate that. um, so about privilege escalation in cloud. Actually, the past months, I have been a little bit absent from Windows and Linux privilege escalation, and I have been more dedicated to, to cloud privilege escalation, mainly to seamsters, platforms related to
Mhm.
CI/CD pipelines,
Okay.
because I found very interesting how the whole way of the pipeline can be compromised, and there is not much about it outside. There are not much research about, hey, if you find this platform you can do these things, or if you find this other
Mhm.
platform you can do these things. So I have been mainly doing that job. So you say it's pretty different from Linux and Windows privilege escalation,
Mhm.
and I completely agree, because you are not attacking an operative system. You are attacking, you can also be attacking operative system. Probably the most related part between Linux and Windows and cloud in
Mhm.
a normal environment is the fact that you are either going to be able to find these tokens in that machines, or that you're going to be able to talk to these
Mhm.
metadata services somewhere, and you're going to be able to steal some tokens. But from that point, they are going to be completely different.
Mhm.
In cloud, you need to know how the cloud, how the platform, how the SaaS application is working completely, because
Mhm.
different platforms are going to have different privilege escalation techniques. For example, if we take a look to Kubernetes with
Mhm.
it's like probably your own cloud that can be also be run in the cloud in EKS or in GKS
Mhm.
in EKS or GKA in Google.
Mhm.
You're going to find that just for being in a machine inside of that cloud, you're going to have some permissions. You need to
Mhm.
know very carefully what you can do with those permissions, because then you're going to be able to privilege escalate inside that platform. So in Kubernetes, you might find a service account that may be able to exec in another pod that will have another service account that might be able to create another pod. Then you can just get all those service accounts. What I want to say is that you have all these different permissions, and you need to know what you have and what you can
Mhm.
do with them, and then exploit it. But also you have more add complexity. In case of Kubernetes, you could always try to escape to the node, and from
Mhm.
the node you might be able to compromise the whole cluster, because you might find secrets of other namespaces of
Mhm.
Kubernetes in the containers running in this node. But also from the node, you might be able to access new credentials maybe in an AWS environment. And with
Mhm.
these new credentials, you may be able to escape to the cloud.
Yep.
And then we are talking about, hey, I just compromised this small Kubernetes environment, and now I can escape to this cloud. You have to do
Mhm.
exactly the same. You have some credentials, and you have to enumerate what you can do. But there is a very important difference probably between regular clouds like AWS, like
Yep.
Google Cloud, and things that maybe we are more common with, like Active Directory or Kubernetes. And it's the fact that by default, having just some credentials in AWS or GCP or Azure,
Mhm.
I haven't touched too much Azure, but I suppose it's the same. You're not going to be able to get just all the users, all the permissions, or everything can do.
Mhm.
So something very important is that you have your credentials. Maybe your view is very, very limited. You see that you can impersonate this other service account, or this other
Mhm.
IAM role. And then with that new set of credentials, you will need to enumerate everything again, because you might be able to see new things. And
Yep.
that's something nice about Purple Panda, is the fact that you can just indicate as much credentials as you want, and it is going to be rerun with all the credentials, merging all the discovery assets
Mhm.
together. So finally, you're going to be able to see everything you can from the credentials you have.
It sounds a bit like Bloodhound for kind
Yeah,
of.
no,
It's
actually that's on me, because I mentioned Purple Panda, but I didn't introduce it properly. It's actually kind of a bloodhound, because I have graphs, I have
yeah.
the paths you can follow to previous escalate. So instead for Active Directory, it is for specific clouds, but also between them, because there is another layer of complexity added to all of this, and it's the fact that maybe you have a cloud, maybe this cloud have some users that can impersonate other users inside this cloud or inside other clouds, but then you have integrations between different platforms.
Yeah.
Because maybe in a common example I used to put is, maybe you have compromised a token or a user inside GitHub, with can manage to bypass a branch protection and merge directly into master in a repo. Bypassing that branch protection must not be that hard as people might think. I'm not going to explain all the techniques, but all of them are in hack tricks. But maybe you go to Google Cloud and you find this cloud function that is just running that repo from GitHub. And obviously this cloud function is going to be a lambda in the AWS world, and it's going to be running with some set of permissions inside any of the clouds. So if you can just merge into this repo, you are probably going to be able to compromise that new account inside this cloud. So you have also this kind of integrations, or if you are storing your containers in GCR and you are running it in AKS inside AWS, just with write access over that bucket that contains these container images and overriding one of them, you are going to be able to run it inside the AKS in AWS, and you are going to be able to compromise another Kubernetes with another AWS with a lot of new possibilities. And I'm just starting. There are tens of ways to integrate different things, different platforms with different methods, and this is just a small part of the pipeline, because then you have obviously the library repos, you have the machines of the developers, you have there are a lot of different steps, and it's too easy probably to compromise it.
Yeah, have you used much of the version control pieces as well? Because I know that it has a very poor job at version controls. If you just increment some of the versions, you can actually overwrite, because it automatically applies at any of the latest versions. Because people have switched to automatic updates, and if you have write to repository, you can simply put your own with a newer version revision. It's just one increase, and it will apply.
Actually, that's from where I started. I just compromised the version repository we have that developers are using to download all the libraries and so on, and obviously releases are also using it. And I just found how something I don't like about these probably smaller platforms than clouds is that you can assign some roles, but you cannot granularly define what each person and each group can do. You will probably have you have write access, you have read access, and you cannot say maybe, hey, I want this guy to be able to modify these libraries or these repositories, or maybe just this, or maybe I don't want it to be able to overwrite new releases. What I find there is that most of the developers and other people, we have write access because at some point they might need it. And any one of them can just go there and create a new repository, compromise an already created release, create a new release. They can do whatever they want, and they are going to compromise the whole pipeline.
You reminded when you were talking about the difference between traditional OS type of platforms and cloud. It reminds me that when I think about kind of doing pen testing of cloud systems, it's almost like pen testing an API. In many cases, it's just it's service driven. You probably have some type of API call, and you're either basically writing to it or calling from it, and depending on what privileges or what access you have, you're looking to get as much information and visibility as possible. It reminds me of one box I did on Hack the Box a while ago, which was just looking it up here, was Steam Cloud, which was basically a pod Kubernetes driven platform. So it was it was a lot of fun doing. It was one of my first times getting into doing pods and basically being able to write new pods and then elevating privileges and then breaking out of it. But for anyone who's listening to the audience, if you're interested in even going and trying this, it might maybe even the Panda might work here. But yeah, the Steam Cloud is a good box to go and try the skills out if you're looking to get into containers and Kubernetes for sure. So.
Actually, I have an embarrassing story about Kubernetes. It was the fact that I managed to get to the finals of this live Hack the Box event, and the final boss, the final machine, was a Kubernetes machine. And at that point, it was funny because I was playing with my mate, and I told him like, "Hey man, this is exactly the work I was supposed to be doing in my job, but I haven't started it, and I feel very, 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 very bad because I don't know how to manage this. I haven't used Kubernetes in a year. Probably the last time was when I did this Hack the Box machine, and at the end we won because we didn't won. The other team lost because they just didn't patch correctly something that they started losing points. But after that, I knew I needed to dedicate more time to Kubernetes, and actually, I think one of the most advanced, or maybe the most advanced, publicly available pen testing Kubernetes methodology. You can find it in Hacktrees. It has like tens of pages about how it works, how to abuse, how to escape. A lot of things.
I think definitely. My go-to places is definitely Hattrix, and also all the payloads, all the things, the Swiss key payloads, and also Got Milk. I think those are my probably three most commonly used websites that I go to frequently. So yeah, I think I've even cloned the repository, so at least I have offline access when I need to, because you never know.
So I also use those repos a lot.
Yeah. So which ones? So outside of your own repos, which ones do you use the most outside of your own side? Which places do you go to for learning and information?
Well, that's a tricky question. I'm being honest. The blog I use the most is Hattrix because I usually forget what I have written there, and I just know that I have written something about what I'm thinking, so I just go to Hacktrees to the page and look for it. So that's very, very, that makes my life much easier. You say the payloads of the things is probably the second one I use the most because, it's very, very useful to find just payloads and start trying things and learn about new techniques and so on. Which other ones I use? I used to like a lot some tutorials that appears in hacking articles. I think it's called.
Hacking articles is pretty good. Yeah, they have pretty good, very thorough kind of multiple ways of doing similar. Yeah. If you have a specific goal in mind, the hacking articles is definitely a good way to go through and kind of seeing alternative ways of doing the same thing. I like that approach. Is that here's a way. If you want to do reverse shells, here's a good couple of different ways you can do it on different platforms. What I try to do though when I'm doing any types of kind of flags is my preference is to change the elevate locally in the machine rather than doing reverse shells, because if you practice that more, when you get into the real world, reverse shells can be very noisy. So you want to elevate without actually creating a lot of communication. So sometimes it's good practice to kind of think when you're doing it in even gamification side, you want to practice the things that doesn't create noise when you're actually doing it in the real world side as well. You want to go through some of those techniques. So what's some of your preferred ways that you like to do in regards to elevating?
In order to elevate privilege locally.
Yeah. Locally, do the same, changing permissions or creating users or.
I think probably the thing I use the most in Linux will be to just create a bash with suid bit shed. And just execute it. And if that doesn't work, probably I will just change or create a new user or change the password of one user.
Yeah, it's the least noisy perspective, because anytime you're creating connections, people can trigger. And the goal is my goal is to be as stealthy as possible.
Yeah. Well, Yes and no. I would also keep in mind where I am, because in a lot of cases, if you just out of the blue create a SUID binary,
Mhm.
like it's so known this way of escalated privilege that I think some alert is going to be triggered. Like, hey, for some reason, someone has
Mhm.
created a SUID binary that shouldn't be happening. So, but yeah, probably creating just a reversal will trigger a lot of alerts saying
Yeah.
there is this bus pipe working, and it's not ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. And how often do you see kernel exploits happening? You know, we do see them periodically. We saw dirty pipes recently appearing in Linux kernel. We have the rotten potatoes and juicy potatoes and other potatoes and many potatoes, which is and lots of cows, dirty cow on Linux. How of course, organizations still struggle to update and patch systems. How frequent do you still see kernel exploits kind of being used?
Well, unfortunately, I have been seeing this kind of exploits much frequently in the last months.
Mhm.
And we have had these three, it was called PwnKit, the PwnKit
Mhm.
exploit, and the dirty pipe.
Yeah.
Very, very useful if you're an attacker. Obviously, all the potatoes, all the print whatever ways to
Mhm.
escalate privilege in Windows. So I actually dedicate WinPEAS, well, the piece
Mhm.
scripts to find misconfigurations and not just find kernel exploits, because I thought that was something that with time were going to slowly disappear.
Mhm.
But from time to time, we have these months where everything is broken,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of unknown ways to escalate privilege. So lately, I have been seeing them a lot.
Mhm.
Um, it's also funny to see how people call the exploits the potatoes, the peas, the cow. Like, you can have a proper meal just escalating privilege.
It's almost like a farm. It used to be all about the furry animals. Now it's about the farm animals. So it does it does have these seasonal different environments where people just kind of get on the different kind of trending buzzwords. So yeah, it used to be all the furry animals. Now it's the garden animals and vegetables. I always love the kind of the creativity that many people have of putting into these. so so it makes it some of the fun things. One of the questions I've got for you as well is that I saw recently. I remember seeing a lot of threads around the Active Directory piece that came out around the for doing Active Directory. For me, I typically use mostly Bloodhound side of things, but I haven't got to use it. But I saw the thread about somebody creating their own Peas branded was it utility. How important is it for other people to contribute to what you're doing? How do you find it? Is it are you willing to be open and get other people contributing in or calling other new tools after Peas? Because I think it can be a bit misleading if you do see something Peas, you think it's going to come from you. Um, what's,
Yeah,
what's your thoughts around that?
I I mean, to be honest, I don't think it was proper from a person that I don't know, that have never
Mhm.
spoken to me, to create just a piece, because I mean, the tool doesn't even have the output structure of a piece. So
Yeah.
I think he was just using that name for making some publicity.
Hmm.
But as you said, community contributions are very, 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 very important. And I understand that if he wants to call him piece his tool, he
Hmm.
can. And obviously, I don't have any PowerShell script in the piece, so I
Hmm.
try to talk to him and suggest him that if he managed to move the output structure for a more piece structure
Hmm.
with some colors, with the banner, with disclaimer,
Yep.
just the common piece structure. I wouldn't mind to, and obviously after I review the code, I wouldn't mind putting it in the official piece repo
Hmm.
if that's what he wants. But also, I found something that I didn't like, and it's the fact that someone just posted, "Hey, I found this new piece. Thank you very much, Carlos, whatever." And man,
You'd be shocked.
that wasn't even my repo. Like, and that wasn't even the banner of the piece. Like, people start thinking that it was my tool because it had the name peace, and we work in cybersecurity. We shouldn't be able to be phished that easily. Like,
we should do proper OSINT. Proper OSINT should be able to find the source.
People is going to create the SunOS piece. It's going to be an amazing backdoor, and people is going to just start executing it because it's called peace or whatever. If it's not on my repo, you can be sure that it's not mine.
And you have to be careful with what you're running as well. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm always adamant, and I even remember was it early last year that Tibris was flagging. I think there was the case in the OCP exam. One of the changes you made was it was actually, was it the kernel exploit that was in there that was actually triggering what was, because you always have to be very careful what you're running. And that's one thing is every time I've got images, I'm going through and always checking to see what version or what's actually running in there, what version I've got, to make sure that it's always legal in regards to, working with the client or something like that. So, but you're absolutely right. Always review the code.
Yeah. About what happened with the OSCP, I have to say that it wasn't my fault. Obviously, it wasn't my fault, but it wasn't my fault in a very deep level. Well, obviously, people should read the code before running anything. I am releasing new versions of LinPEAS, but they are mostly the same. Maybe just a few things changed. So I encourage people to read that. The thing what's happening here is that I had this exploit in Linux, which is that you can get pseudo tokens from other process of your own user and just escalate privilege without knowing the password of the user. So I put this check in LinPEAS maybe 1 year, 2 years before the OSCP exam, the OSCP guys decided to put these privilege escalation techniques. And I also had this technique in Hacktricks for so long. So I could believe that they read this privilege escalation technique in Hacktricks. They say, wow, this is kind of easy and cool thing to do. And they just put it in the OSCP. The thing is that for LinPEAS, it was in order to know if it was exploitable, if it was vulnerable, you needed to try to exploit it.
Yeah.
So if I was already exploiting it, I'm going to give you a shell and you're going to be root and everyone is going to be happy. But then the OSCP considered that because of that exploit, LinPEAS wasn't an enumeration tool, was an automatically exploit tool, and they decided to not pass this guy. After that, I talked with the OSCP guys. I modified that check. So instead of exploiting it, it just tells you, hey, this is vulnerable. Just go to Hacktricks and copy paste the exploit. Apparently, that makes LinPEAS again an enumeration tool. They agree. They allow again LinPEAS to be used. This is from time to time. I have some person asking me what is the OSCP safe version of LinPEAS. Everyone is. Every release of LinPEAS can be used in the OSCP.
That's good to hear for everyone. For everyone who's listening, that's planning to do OSCP, definitely. now you hear.
and the OSCP people at the end passed this guy.
They changed it.
It was a story with a happy ending.
We were all kind of like I think on social media it was like quite a lot of us who were like kind of pushing. It's like, what? That's such a minor, I know things are set for people to do the skills and know the techniques and stuff, but that was such a minor thing to impact somebody, and that's so stressful scenario for that individual. So, but yeah, it's great to kind of have that compromise and have that discussion. But you're absolutely right. Even going back to the Active Directory one, you're absolutely right. If you're going to run anything, I even prefer to modify everything beforehand just to make sure, or check every payload or rewrite it in my own kind of way to make sure that I understand what it's doing. So yeah, to see something called peas, you're going to do OSINT, you're going to check it, and you're going to make sure it's coming from your repository before running it. Because even anyone who has forked versions, sitting in their own repos, I won't touch them. Because I don't know unless I do a comparison to see exactly what's happening. You don't know what they've changed or what's modified there.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No. Like, that's essential. We work in cybersecurity. You should know what you are running.
Absolutely. So, question: what about community-wise? How can the community help you contribute? What things can people get involved to help
Ooh,
you? So, what can the audience who's listening in see how they can contribute
this is
to your awesome work?
this is a really nice question because new things are coming for the hack tricks and peace world.
Mm,
So let me disclose what is going to
mm,
be happening. Probably next week, maybe the week after. I'm going to be releasing some exclusive piece versions and hack tricks.
mhm,
Because my goal, knowing that a lot of people is using it, is I would love to dedicate more time and even try to
mhm,
professionally dedicate to just create tools for the community, because well, I have a lot of ideas in mind that people I think will find useful. So I'm going to be creating a subscription way to
mhm,
access these new versions of Hacktricks and the Peas and Purple Panda and other
mhm,
tools. So people might contribute just paying these subscriptions, which will allow me to dedicate more time and to give better content to the subscribers.
mhm,
But also, I want to indicate that if I manage to dedicate to the piece, if I manage to dedicate more time to
mhm,
Hactrix and so on, I'm not going to leave alone the white community. My idea is every some months merge the master
mhm,
versions into the community versions. So they are going to be updated every once in a while. And if I dedicate more time to this, probably the updates that I'm going to be doing for the community versions are going to be better that the
mhm.
updates I'm doing regularly, but with needing to do other things with my in my time. So I think everyone is going to win, but obviously it's not all about that. Actually, I would love to find people that want to contribute with
Mhm,
code, because there are a lot of new things I want to
mhm,
put in the piece. I want to put in Purple Panda. I would love people to help me researching for hat tricks and reporting new techniques, new
mhm,
ways to do things in hack tricks. So I also encourage that people that want access to the latest version of these tools and don't want to pay anything, if they are willing to dedicate some hours every
mhm,
week to help me with them, I will very gladly give them access to the latest things, and they can just pay the community or pay me by
mhm.
giving some hours and improving these tools.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great to connect because the way that we all win together is by collaborating. That's the only way we can be successful is transparency, collaborating as a community to make the world a safer place. And that's ultimately,
Yeah.
we can't do it by ourselves. We can't do it individually. We can do some contribution individually, but the way we, really make the world a different place, a safer place, is working together. So absolutely, that's great to hear. We'll definitely make sure that if you have a link that we can add for the subscription or how people can reach out, we'll make sure to include those as well. Carlos, it has been awesome having you on. I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we'll leave that for another time. I've also we didn't get to meet each other the other week for a very short amount of time,
Yeah, very, very, very short.
very very short amount of time. But definitely, I'm pretty sure we'll cross paths again in the near future. Whether you're going to be at either Black Hat or DEF CON or RSA or whatever events in the near future, we'll definitely make sure to catch up and to spend some more time
Yeah.
together. But it's been awesome having you on the show. This has been, for me, it's a topic that I love talking about. It's one of my favorite things to do, as I mentioned. And what you're doing in the community, the work that you do is amazing. It's fantastic. So please, whatever we can do to support you, we'll do what we can to keep it going. Any final things you would like to say to the audience before we finish up and wrap up for the day?
No, man, I really appreciate the works, and I completely agree. The way to improve the cybersecurity is working together. And what a best way to work together than submitting pull requests to Hacktricks. So I invite everyone to do that. And now, joking aside, no, thank you very much for having me here. I definitely enjoy, as you know, the previous escalation topic, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I hope we will be able to meet in person with a longer period of time.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, maybe no, because the problem is when you're wearing masks as well, it's hard. You may as well have names or something on the mask. That also makes it a bit easier to see as well. So, but it's been awesome having you on. Many thanks for everything, and again for the audience, definitely, go if you're looking to learn more. We'll make sure you get the links to the show notes. Definitely go check out Carlos's repo. And again, tune in every 2 weeks for 401 Access Denied. Podcast is really here to help share knowledge with you and introduce you to awesome and amazing people. So again, stay safe, and thank you, Carlos, for being an awesome guest in the show.
Thank you very much.